Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Northern Illinois Visitors Edition. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us in just a moment will be the radio play-by-play voice of the Huskies, Bill Baker. Let's get it rolling, though, with my view from Section 17. I'm sure many of you are like me, very pleased with the 2-0 start this season. The defense has been a pleasant surprise so far, and we all love that running game. Still, my inbox is loaded with fans worried to death about our passing game. I say let's wait to see if there is a reason to be concerned. I would love to see a more balanced attack, but our running game has been so anemic the last 6 years that I'm more than satisfied to watch us perfect that segment of our attack. This week brings us the opportunity, though, to work on the passing game, and that's weather permitting, because as of right now, the weatherman is calling for a 60% chance of rain, maybe even some thunderstorms during the game. Northern Illinois has given up points this year, and their secondary is very young. So I'm sure Josh Gaddis will feature a game plan that involves more of the passing attack. My guest today says on paper the Huskies don't have much of a chance on Saturday. That said, we should not look past them. Respecting your opponent is something all good programs preach to their team. The Huskies' past is full of major upsets. And as Coach Hammock said this week at his Monday presser, there is no pressure on his team. They will come in here Saturday and let it fly. Up next on the show is Bill Baker, the radio play-by-play voice of Northern Illinois football, on this week's Visitors Edition of the Michigan Man. So stay with us. Joining us on our visitors segment this week is Northern Illinois radio play-by-play voice, Bill Baker. Bill, great to have you with us.
I appreciate the chance to talk to everybody over that way, and certainly looking forward to getting to the big house. It'll be the second time in my career that I've been able to work out of that place, and certainly looking forward to it.
Well, Bill, you've been behind the microphone for a long time calling the action for the Huskies. I think this is the 41st year, if I'm correct?
42 to be exact. Yeah, we're moving along. I don't know how much you want to count last year because there wasn't much going last year, but no, this would be number 42.
Well, in those years, of course, you've seen a lot of changes, a lot of big wins, heartbreaking losses, and one of the changes for the better has been, I think, MAC teams hooking up against Big Ten teams, really all Power 5 conference teams. And, you know, I came of age back in the 60s and the 70s, the Schembechler era at Michigan. And that wasn't the case back then, where Big Ten teams too often played MAC teams. That's been a change for the better, hasn't it?
Well, yes, it was a slow process. Now, I began in 1980 And in my very first year, they did play Wisconsin, as memory serves. I think it was either 80 or 81 in that neck of the woods. So the premise was there for NIU. In fact, NIU just celebrated, very coincidentally, on 9/11. It was their 50th anniversary of ever playing a team that today would be considered a Power 5 team. And it was a game at Wisconsin up in Camp Randall Stadium that they lost 31-0. So the Huskies actually have 50 years worth of that experience. But you're right, there's been more as you move along. And I think part of that, quite honestly, is that the Mid-American Conference has become a little more competitive. And I think the Big Ten, Michigan included, realizing this. And you want to play good people. You definitely want to play good people. That's what's happened. And it'll be interesting now as we get further along with all of this conference realignment and these scheduling groups that are going to work together. Hopefully, those opportunities are still going to be there for the Mid-American Conference.
No, I'm guessing they will. I'd also guess the highlight of calling Huskies football was in 2013 when they won the MAC, played Florida State in the Orange Bowl behind a really great quarterback, Jordan Lynch. That has to be at least near the top of your list, doesn't it?
Yeah, I tell you what, that's a tough one because I flip-flop on that. I mean, certainly the Orange Bowl experience is something that very few, what they call them now, group of 5 teams get to experience. And going up against a Florida State club that I think had something like 11 people wind up in the National Football League and National Football League camps, either via the draft or via free agent signings, and playing it down in Miami and having a Heisman Trophy finalist like Jordan Lynch lead your club. Certainly that's got to be right up there. That's a crown jewel. But I'd take you back a couple of years before that to 2003 when in that particular season, NIU won at home against Maryland. And now Maryland wasn't a member of the Big Ten at that time. They won at home against Iowa State. And then sandwiched in between, they had a huge victory in Tuscaloosa. They beat Alabama in Alabama and Alabama. So that's another one of those crown jewels that it's hard to pick between number 1 and number 2 on some occasions.
I forgot about that Alabama game, but a lot of big wins in there. Well, a lot of our younger listeners might not remember this, but this, as you mentioned, is the second meeting between the Huskies and the Wolverines. The first was in 2005, 33-17 Michigan win. Looking back at that game, though, and I was there, Huskies put up over 400 yards of offense in that game, 6 turnovers, and despite that, it was competitive most of the way, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that was pretty much thanks to a guy by the name of Garrett Wolf who kept it so. And Garrett, you might recall, he was the back that ran it up the left-hand sideline and had to wiggle his way back towards the center of the field the last 10 or 15 yards to get to the end zone. That was, 75 or 76 yards worth of a touchdown that, came at a critical moment. I always felt Michigan, was in control pretty much in that game, but the stick-to-itiveness is what I like to call it on the part of NIU that day. Just they certainly didn't embarrass themselves by any stretch of the imagination. It's been a long time, I think, since NIU was actually, had to deal with a complete blowout against the Big Ten. Early in my career, which began in 1980, we'd go into Iowa, and they might be in the 40s, and we might be in single digits or something along those lines. And certainly Wisconsin, it was 31-0 and 31-7, and a couple of others. But slowly but surely that began to change a little bit, and even sometimes you don't win the game, but you still perform admirably, and that's what your fan base, I think, is looking for when you go up against a powerhouse like Michigan.
Well, last year was one all of us would like to forget for a lot of reasons. It was a rough year for the Huskies, but this year started with a nice win on the road against Georgia Tech, and then last Saturday at home, a tough loss in what was a very entertaining game against Wyoming. I got to see it. This year's team seems to have made some strides in the right direction, Bill, hasn't it?
Well, no question, and these are young people that are making these strides in the right direction. I think NIU a year ago, and in my mind, and Mike, I'll be honest with you, in my mind, 2020 almost didn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, here's 12 games that were, 6 games rather, that were strung together, 12 if you count the 6 that you guys played, and kind of strung together at the last second. I mean, first there was the expectation over the summer that, we're going to be able to play ball. And then one by one, Various conferences said, no, we're going to err on the side of caution, which they should do, and we're just not going to do it this year. And then things began to change. Things began to get a little bit better. And as you know, one by one, the conferences came back. And by then, I mean, you're kissing the month of October, and there's not a lot of football season left to be played. There was an idea about maybe moving it to the spring, which thankfully they didn't do, because I always thought the spring would have been a bit of a disaster. And for those that did play spring football, there was a resurgence, and obviously things didn't turn out all that well. But you couldn't really gear up for a season. I mean, it was, yes, we're playing. No, we're not playing. Well, we might play. Then, yes, we are playing. You got 5 weeks to get ready. Yeah, and you don't have any of the buildup that usually goes to that. You don't have your off-season conditioning as much. You don't have your spring workouts, your 15 practices in the spring, which is huge. And then over the course of the summer, people can't get together because of the virus last year. And then you're not playing. There's no fall camp. So, but this time around, I think a lot of the improvement has come from the fact that there was some normalcy. They were able to go through everything that you normally go through in an off-season, beginning in December of last year, which has led up to where we happen to be right now, going into game number 3 for each of us. So, not putting the cart before the horse or anything like this. It's just it's a matter of just getting better by attrition. We had a ton of freshmen working through that 2020 season that certainly got better, and we knew that whatever improvement NIU was going to have between last year and this year is going to pretty much have to come from within. There are a handful of people we got via the portal, which have certainly contributed in a big way, but a lot of the improvement has come from freshmen who are now COVID freshmen. So after today, they're still going to be around, perhaps another 3 years, 4 years, depending. It's really kind of a jumbled mess, but it appears that NIU is on a pretty good track, and hopefully college football is also.
Well, a familiar name to Michigan fans will be under center this week when the Huskies come into the big house. Spartan transfer Rocky Lombardi, and he had a career day against us last year. How has he played in the first 2 games, Bill?
The game against Georgia Tech. Here's a young fellow that had gone through the summer and gone through fall camp and was there in the spring and had a chance to learn the offense. But, I mean, still is the chemistry there. And by the time NIU got to that last quarter and had a chance to win the football game with that late drive, I have never seen as well executed, basically a 2-minute offense as I saw Rocky Lombardi pull with NIU down at Georgia Tech. And then to top that off, you get into the end zone, and you're back to within 1. You look for the tie on the road, maybe take your chances in overtime, but they flash the deuce from the sideline. That was pretty much expected. And he just turns like it's just another play, and I was watching him through the binoculars, and just as cool as you might be, and just he was a leader. He was a guy that other players draw inspiration from, that people just kind of got behind, if you know what I mean, Mike. Wherever he was going, it was the place we had to be. And, I mean, he certainly availed himself. He was everything we had hoped and expected he would be coming out of a Big Ten program. Now, that being said, he had a little bit of a rough day in the second game against Wyoming. There were some tipped passes. One was tipped, I think, for the interception and a touchdown. Another one was just flat out caught. The kid that went up in the air, and his vertical jump must have caught the eye of half the basketball staff to snag it. This kid was a linebacker, too, and ran it in. So it was a rough day for him with those 3 picks. But you know what? He still came back and still led that ball club to a rally down 26 points to actually take a 1-point lead. I mean, that was a lot of people had a lot to do with that. But Lombardi was the guy that was taking the snaps. Lombardi was the guy that was getting the ball to the people where he had to get the people, the football, both on the ground and through the air. So he rebounded nicely in the game against Wyoming. And I would have to say, I mean, you want me to give him a grade right now? I would say 8.5 or 9 from what we were hoping for and what we were sort of expecting coming in. And we're really looking forward to this because I know Michigan remembers Lombardi coming in last year with the Spartans. So I don't imagine there's going to be the warmest of welcomes in Ann Arbor, and it will be interesting to see exactly how this young man handles it.
Well, as far as the offense goes, Lombardi has Harrison Whaley in the backfield, and he ran for 179 yards against Wyoming. He was also over 100 yards in the opener against Georgia Tech. Talk about him, Bill, and what kind of a back he is.
He's another one of those young backs who came as a freshman and who is still, in more ways than one, a freshman, but he has really matured, and he'll credit Rocky Lombardi. He has in just conversations I've had with him, with the particular play, and they get back in the huddle, and Lombardi would say, if you get, here's where you have to hit the hole. And, the next time out, he does exactly what Lombardi said. Lombardi's like having a coach in the field and turn back to him. But Harrison Whaley is a guy that's going to listen to you, and he's a guy that's going to take everything to heart, not as criticism, but as a learning experience. He's a slasher. It might take him an extra half second or so to get to full speed, but when he does, he's got the maneuverability, he's got the speed, he's got the talent to beat you to the outside. I think that's his game, really, is getting outside the tackles and making something happen there. But you hit him with a quick opener, and if the blocking scheme is right, the other guys guess wrong, there's some yards to be had up the middle as well. We came up with something. He's currently the number 3 rusher in the country insofar as Division I football is concerned. But Thomas Hammock told us this, and that stat is terrific. But he has another stat that he's also number 3 in the country. Now, that other stat is yards after contact, and that alone tells you a little bit about a running back. And again, like I said, he's number 3 in total yardage, but he's also number 3 in the amount of yards he picks up after contact.
Well, and that's why the running attack has been so solid through the first 2 weeks and has produced, I think, 6 rushing touchdowns. So that tells me also the offensive line is doing a pretty good job paving the way, Bill.
Well, yep, and this is an experienced line. Now, again, if you just look at them at a glance, and you'll see a redshirt sophomore, a redshirt freshman, a redshirt senior, another freshman, another sophomore, but they played together. These guys were all together last year during that 0-6 season, and several of them were actually together in 2009. They built some nice depth. Cox and Lipping and Braden Patton at the center spot. He's a guy that can play either guard or the center. And, he likes to joke about the fact that they put me at the right guard and then they shoved me over the left guard, and the plays are all backwards when you get on the field. But, he adapts to that. Then you got some of the young guys, Logan Schernitz, and who's a redshirt freshman. And when you look across the waist, they've also got size, and they've got some speed to them. You're talking, they're averaging probably around 310 pounds per man on that offensive line. And just having been together, like we said, all of last year, and then having that opportunity, Mike, to work this season through the spring, and then the work through the summer and into fall camp has paid off dividends.
Well, as we've discussed, the running game is going very well through the first 2 games. But when Lombardi throws this Saturday, who are some of the receivers that we can keep an eye out for?
Well, there are 2 in particular, and one guy we sort of hope gets the ball a little bit more than what he has. You begin with Tyrese Ritchie, who he's one of the super seniors we have at NIU. He's a guy who was done, he was finished, his eligibility was yeared up. Along came COVID. Everybody got an extra year, and he's one of the 6 guys that said, I want to come back and play once again. And a guy that he led the club in catches last year, leading the club in catches this year. Great speed to the outside, works on kick returns as well, and is really, I think he's the leader of the receiving corps. Then you got another guy who also picked up an extra year, and he's from DeKalb. That's Cole Tucker. And very slowly but surely, this guy's turned into the, the possession receiver, the guy that when you need 6 or 7 yards on third down, a lot of times you're going to look for him as opposed to the big number guys, because he has a knack of finding a seam. He has a knack of getting open, and he and Rocky Lombardi, over a very short period of time, Mike, have really developed not just a respect and the ability to, connect with one another and kind of read each other's thoughts, but I call it chemistry. I mean, they've developed a chemistry with one another to where, they're both on exactly the same page, where to go, what to do, and how this thing is supposed to happen. And he's become, a huge weapon. And then the third guy, where's number 85? And this is a guy that was a walk-on who last year they were working in practice His name is Trayvon Rudolph. Like I said, as a walk-on, they were in practice, and it became very obvious that this guy, he's got terrific speed, and here's a guy that you got to have on the field. So they were just a passing drill, and Thomas Hammock painted up a football and said, "Congratulations, you're on scholarship." But he didn't know anything about this. And on the during the practice, they had, I forget who it was that actually threw the football. When he made the catch, the idea was, read the football and celebrate the fact you're on scholarship. Well, he didn't read the football. He just made the catch and very nonchalantly, flipped the ball away. Okay, what's next? That's the kind of guy he is. And finally, somebody said, "Hey, pick up the football and take a good look at it." And that's when he realized, that he's on scholarship. He's turned into a terrific kick returner. He was a freshman All-American last year, primarily as a kick returner. Dangerous coming off of the goal line. We hope to see him be able to return a few more kicks. Today's, college football has changed so much with the kickoffs. It's almost that unless you've got a pretty good wind blowing from one way or the other, you're not going to get too many chances to bring that ball up the field on a kickoff. But he's got the speed, the agility to do it. He was a quarterback in high school, and he is learning the receiving game at this point. He's going to be a good one. By the time he's done, he's going to be a good one. And that's a guy that hopefully by the time we get towards the end of the season, NIU's going to be able to hang their hat on a little bit more than they are right now.
Bill, let's talk about the other side of the ball for just a minute or two, the defense. They've given up some points this year. Talk about the D for a minute and who some of the key players are on that side of the ball for the Huskies.
You start at the linebacking spot, I think, with Lance DeVoe, and he's a redshirt senior, another one of those super seniors, so he's done this year. He's had a history of a couple of dings, but he's always come back strong. And then the guy that's really surprised us is listed as a sophomore. His name is Nick Routine, and had a dickens of a game against Wyoming, played very well down at Georgia Tech as well. It's no surprise now, but they've been running the 4-3 for so many years, and now they've gone to a 4-2 with one guy as sort of a rover, and the idea was to get some athleticism on the field as much as you possibly could, and that's David Rayner, and he's a COVID freshman. He's 6'3", he's got good size, and as a freshman, he's got a knack for the football. Let me tell you, where that ball is, you can pretty much be sure that Rayner is going to be somewhere in that neighborhood. Michael Kennedy is a solid defensive end, I think, as you're going to find. Ray Thomas is another COVID freshman who's coming along nicely on the front line. James Esther anchors the middle at the nose, and he's 6'3" and 286 pounds, and he's a redshirt freshman, so he's got a few games underneath his belt already, and is getting bigger and he's getting stronger. The corners, I mean, you look at Jordan Gandy and you look at Eric Rogers, our both good. Rogers has come along. Instead of names, just looking at that secondary, you've got a COVID freshman, you've got another COVID freshman backed up by a COVID freshman, that's at the safety. You've got a COVID freshman starting at the other safety, backed up by a sophomore. And then you got the old man, Jordan Gandy, is a sophomore and a junior in the Jermaine Marge. It's a very young secondary. That's what I'm trying to get to. When you look at the 8 people in there, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those guys are either true freshmen or COVID freshmen. So they're coming along slowly but surely. It's a work in progress. They had some terrific moments, obviously, against Georgia Tech, holding them to 21 points and 3 touchdowns in the football game. A rough start against Wyoming, and nobody knows why, but they've gone back. They've looked at the tape. They'll correct what they can correct. But you got to remember, this is the same defense that gave up those 50 points is the defense that held those guys and allowed NIU to take, what was it, a 27-point run to get into the lead by 1 after falling behind by 26. Same guys. So, I mean, there's good and there was bad in that game against Wyoming, and looking forward to seeing what happens in Ann Arbor on Saturday.
Well, the MAC is a very balanced and tough league. Once again, always has been in my lifetime, especially in the West this year. Do you see this Huskies team as one that can compete with Western Michigan, Toledo, Ball State, Central Michigan this year?
Well, we're going to find out. I mean, that's the truth. And it's so difficult to predict, Mike, because until you really get into it and see who's back and who has gone to the portal, there's so much movement. I know Michigan had people out into the portal and coming back in via the portal. You wouldn't think that a Power 5 club with the tradition of the Wolverines would have that much movement, but they did. And we had our share of it. Everybody did in the in the Mid-American Conference. And if you think football's crazy, I've kind of kept an eye on basketball. Wait till you get around to that and see what's happening. Because I don't think anybody has any clues to who has what, where people have gone to basketball. But the same thing to, I think, a lesser degree in football. NIU, we had chances. Went to Western Michigan last year and lost a very close game. Didn't fare so well against the likes of Buffalo and Central Michigan. Played at Ball State, the club that wound up winning the Mid-American title and wound up winning their bowl game. And that was a 6-point loss down in Muncie. So, yeah, they've had their opportunities. And I really think that last year, like I said before, it's almost as if I just want to push it out of my mind. It wasn't really college football. It wasn't really Northern Illinois, not the NIU that we've come to work with and come to know and the success we've come to expect. I'm thinking this could be a wide open Western Division. Toledo appears to be the creme de la creme, at least in the early going. I mean, they go to Notre Dame and darn near pull off the upset. Yeah. So that's certainly a feather in their cap. Ball State had a struggle to beat Western Illinois. They beat them by 10 in Muncie, and the trip over the Happy Valley wasn't so successful, and they got wasted fairly well by Penn State. You guys saw Western Michigan. It was at 47-14. We're hoping that we do a little bit better than that. That'll be kind of a gauge for us. Eastern has improved markedly over the last 2, 3, 4 years, so they're always, I think, going to be in the thick of it. Right? I think this is going to be more wide open of a Western Division than a lot of people think. And if you look at the MAC East, it's probably going to be Kent State. And after that, I mean, it's wide open in my mind with Buffalo losing the coaching staff and a bunch of talent. And you got Miami, and then you've even got Ohio, despite the fact Frank Solich retired. They're going to chase for that number 2 spot. It's going to be a real interesting college football season.
Well, final question, Bill, before we let you get away. From what you've seen of this Huskies team so far, and I know 2 games is a small sample, but do you think they have enough talent to come into the big house and, hey, if they get some breaks, things go their way, be competitive with this Michigan team?
Anything can happen, Mike. Anything can happen. Okay, I've watched NIU football now. Now, granted, this is over the span of 42 years, but I watched them win their first ever game against the Big Ten. It was all the way back in 1988. And they went up to Wisconsin to beat them. And you know what? There were a couple of other games since that time in Madison that NIU should have won, and we won't get into it. I watched them twice going to West Lafayette and whip up on Purdue. I watched them go to Minnesota and win up that way. I watched them play a pretty good Iowa team back in 2013 and beat them with a last-second field goal. They went back into Purdue and won with 55 points on the board. The big regional matchup, as we like to call it back this way, with Northwestern up at Evanston back in 2014. They go to Nebraska and beat them 21-17. That was in 2017. So, yeah, I mean, each time you go in, and each time I'm pretty sure they were fairly good underdogs, as they are once again. But there are 2 sides to it, and coaches know this. It's getting your club prepared for whatever the other guy may throw at him. And the other side of it is respecting the opposition. Now, I'm not saying that Michigan doesn't do. I'm not saying anybody doesn't do that, but you've got to respect the opposition. Is that what helped Northern garner some of these wins? Is that what helped them at Alabama when they won against Maryland earlier in was back in 2003, like I had mentioned? I'm not sure. I can't tell you that. So is there a chance? Heck yeah, there's a chance. You go to play the game. You've only got 12 opportunities all season long, unless you're fortunate enough to get to league championship game and then maybe a bowl game after that. So 14 at the moment, at the most. And you look forward to each and every one of them. You're going to play your hardest because you want to win each and every one of them. And they're going to walk out onto a field on Saturday that is going to be surrounded by anywhere between 105 and 110,000 people. Some of them have seen crowds, like that before. But they're going to come out there, and really, there's no pressure on NIU. The old story, I forget where this came from, but the old saying, and Thomas Hammock told us yesterday, the Huskies have no pressure. He didn't say this, but somebody did. If you win, you're a hero, and if you lose, well, you were supposed to. So with all that, yeah, there's a chance. You just never know, but never say never. I found that out watching college football for the past 42 years.
Here with us on our Visitors Edition this week has been Northern Illinois radio play-by-play voice of Bill Baker in his 42nd year calling the play-by-play for the Huskies. Bill, we appreciate you carving out so much time for us, and enjoy your Saturday in Ann Arbor.
We will do that. I appreciate the chance to talk with you and to have the opportunity to tell people your way about NIU Husky football. It's an easy thing to fall in love with. College football is an easy thing to fall in love with. We will enjoy our trip to the big house in Ann Arbor without question. Best of luck to you. I know Jim Harbaugh a little bit. I loved him when he was with the Bears. So to Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan program, I will say the absolute best of luck to you people, beginning just as soon as we get out of town.
On Quick Hits today, no news on the injury front. As far as we know, we are very healthy for Saturday's game. Here are some game day notes of interest. These two teams have met only one time. It was on September 3rd, 2005, here in Ann Arbor, a 33-17 Michigan win. Thomas Hammock is the head man for the Huskies and is in his third year. He has a 6-14 record. In last year's COVID season, the Huskies were 0-6. They returned 19 starters, 7 on offense, 10 on defense, and 2 special teams players. Their last postseason appearance was in the 2018 Boca Raton Bowl, a 37-13 loss to Alabama Birmingham. They started the season with a road win at Georgia Tech and lost at home in a shootout last week to Wyoming. The weatherman says you will need your rain gear this Saturday. As of now, we have a 60% chance of scattered showers and thunderstorms. Temps will be in the mid-70s to near 80, with winds out of the southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Might be another good day to run the football. We shall see. When you play 12 games, each one of them is big. Even though NIU is a heavy underdog, they will come to play, so we need to be workmanlike, take care of business, and keep getting better. Next week, we open the Big Ten season at home against Rutgers. This is a team on the way up. They are recruiting well, are very well coached, and we will certainly need to be more balanced on offense, as they might be the first team that has the personnel to load the box on us and force us to throw the ball downfield. On Tuesday's Michigan Game Day show, my guest will be beat writer Aaron McMahon from MLive. With us on the Thursday Visitors Edition will be Rutgers beat writer James Cratch from the Newark Star-Ledger. So make sure you join us for that. That will do it for another show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Think victory, beat Northern Illinois. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!